Problem solved. Hello everyone and welcome back to Scooping Poop with Vivian. In today's video, we are going to be covering the topic of gut loading, what it is, what it does, and why it's very important. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. So the first question we're going to answer is, what is gut loading? So gut loading is the process of feeding your feeder insects before you give them to your reptile. So you're probably thinking that's really easy to do and it's such a simple term. Why are we covering it here today? I'm covering it because it is very, very important in order to provide proper nutrition for your feeder insects so that nutrition gets passed on to your reptile. Here's the thing, a lot of people think they're providing their feeder insects with the proper food, but in reality, they aren't. And I'll explain that in further detail later. But first, let's cover how to gut load your feeder insects. So this will depend on what kind of feeder insects you are feeding. Right now, let's talk about superworms, dubia roaches, and crickets, or anything that can live around room temperature / outside your refrigerator. So with these creatures, you want to be giving them different types of foods at least 24 hours before you feed your reptile. So the easiest way to accomplish this is to constantly feed them and provide them with a fresh food source or water source. So what are foods you can feed your feeder insects? Vegetables and fruits are a great option because not only do they provide actual nutrients and food, they also provide water content. So vegetables can really include anything such as scraps like carrots, cucumber, blah, 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 fruits, blah, blah, blah. It can pretty much include anything as long as that specific fruit is safe for your insects and also your reptile. So just simply search up your each individual species to find out. But it seems really, really simple. There's no need to dust the food with any kind of excess calcium, considering the fact that you will also dust your feeder insects before you feed them off to your reptile. So there's no need to add any extra vitamins to the food you're giving to your feeder insects. So in this container, I have a couple of superworms. So an example of gut loading would just be, I have a pear.
I have a pen. I have an apple.
I have a pear. And worms. Problem solved. So it is important that you keep an eye on the food. If it ever gets moldy or dried up, you do want to take it out of your tank. If it starts getting really gross, you want to take it out. But besides that, as long as you're eating it, just keep on replacing their food. And that way you ensure that whenever you feed your reptile, that your insects are completely gut loaded. So the same thing will apply to feeder insects such as dubia roaches and crickets, but in order to make it easier, you can actually put it in a dish and put it in one area of the tank so that everything is clean and you can keep track of how much food they're eating. Now let's talk about water sources. So a lot of people might think, well, in order to provide water, I'll have to provide a water bowl. That's a horrible idea because they can't swim. Like, they will drown essentially. They will see some water and it'll literally be like half an inch and they will find a way to drown themselves. I don't know how to explain it, man. Yeah. But instead, there are better ways to provide water. One way, you can soak up cotton balls with water and then squeeze it out and then put it in their tank so they can suck the water out of the cotton balls. Another way is raw potatoes, because not only does it provide nutrients, but potatoes are super duper watery, and that's a great way to provide water. And of course with other vegetables as well. And the final way I can think of is using water gel crystals. Now you've probably seen these before, and some of them even say fortified with extra vitamins or calcium. That doesn't matter. You cannot just give them water crystals alone. Water crystals can definitely be added in order to make sure that all your feeder insects are hydrated. But there are some people out there who just give them vitamin fortified water crystals, and that does not provide enough nutrients for your feeder insects, and that will reflect on your reptile. Another thing I see very common are commercial feeder insect foods. Although these are most of the time okay, I generally like to prefer feeding them fresh fruits and vegetables and giving them a more varied diet, because with commercial foods, one thing I find is that they dry out super duper quickly, they're expensive, and not all insects will eat them. But besides that, I don't really find any more issues with commercial food. As long as it works out for you and it has all the essential vitamins and nutrients, I say it's okay, but definitely don't just give them calcium water crystals. Just what? Now, really quickly, I want to talk about the feeder insects that you keep in your refrigerator. So this will include things such as mealworms and also waxworms. So you're probably wondering, how the hell do I gut load these animals, and is it truly necessary? So honestly, if you're feeding like 2 or 3 waxworms once a month as a treat, gut loading does not become as important because it is obviously no longer a major food source for your reptiles. Same thing applies with mealworms. If for you, you're just giving a couple a month as a treat only, it's not very, it does have what you get. If you just give a couple a month as a treat, it's not as important to gut load them. However, I still recommend gut loading these insects if you can, especially if you're feeding them on a more regular basis. So as we all know, mealworms, for example, can stay alive in the refrigerator for months and months and months because they're sleeping, they're lazy asses. So basically, we all know when you take mealworms out of the refrigerator, they start coming back to life. So a couple of hours, a few times a week, you can drop a tiny morsel of food into the cup and leave them awake for a couple of hours and they can eat it, so there's nutrients in their system. Again, this is not as necessary, especially if you don't feed these insects on a regular basis. So another insect that I want to cover are hornworms. Now we all know hornworms are absolutely adorable and overpriced, but I love them because they are a wonderful food for your reptiles because they're so high in nutrients and also water. But one thing that's very important about hornworms is that you cannot feed them anything else besides hornworm food. Basically, in the wild, hornworms will eat certain leaves and plants, and that makes them toxic to reptiles. That's why they can survive from predators, because they'll understand that, hey, if I eat this worm, I'll die. But in captivity, we humans have created certain foods that remove the toxicity from the worm. So it's very important that if you have hornworms, you always feed them the food that's left in the container, or if you ever run out, you can find different premixes, such as from Reptiles and other companies. Do not feed them any other food because you do risk poisoning your reptile, and that's not fun. And so lastly, we're going to talk about why gut loading is so freaking important. So in elementary school, we probably learned about the food chain and the energy pyramid and all that jazz. So we know that nutrients that comes from one animal / food gets passed on to the other. Such as if I eat a tomato, the tomato's nutrients will pass on to me, and that's what makes me alive and healthy. But if I ate a piece of cardboard, that'll probably fill my stomach, but that'll give me no nutrients and I'll eventually die. Similar things apply to your reptiles. So basically, a cricket, for example, that does not have proper nutrients / isn't gut loaded, has very, very little nutritional value by itself. Crickets, if you think about it, are kind of just living potato chips in a way. That was a bad metaphor, but you kind of get my point. The cricket itself is not healthy. The reptile will not get all of the nutrients that it could get from the cricket. So you're probably asking me, well, we dust our food, so what's the point of gut loading if we're adding back all the calcium and supplements they need anyway? So if you haven't seen my supplementation video specifically for bearded dragons, I'll put an icon up there so you can go watch it. But if you watch that video, you will know that supplementation is simply a way to top off nutrients. Think about it. If you ate nothing in your life, but except for like those like Flintstone gummy vitamins, you probably wouldn't live a very good life. Supplementation is just to ensure that your reptile is getting everything they need. However, the food you feed them is equally important and honestly more important. Hopefully I covered enough in this video. However, if you have any questions, leave them down below in the comments and I promise I will answer your questions. If you want to be more one-on-one and personal with your question, DM me on Instagram at scoopingpoop and I will be sure to answer within a couple of days. I want to thank you guys for all the support I've gotten. I mean, this channel has grown in such a lovely way and we've built a community, I think, that is wonderful and very supportive, and I love all of you guys. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will link a couple more videos down below if you want some more, and be sure to gut load your insects and love your reptiles. In fact, turn off this video right now and go kiss your reptile. Actually, don't do that. You might get salmonella and die, but that's your choice. Okay, so I'll see you guys in the next video I post. Thank you for watching and bye!